The galaxy watched in silence as the broadcast began. 1,000,000 worlds, linked by the Empire's central transmission network, tuned in as shimmering golden letters scrolled across screens, declaring judgment of the rebellion. Earth's human offender 742G. It was meant to be a display of strength, a warning. Instead, it became the final spark. He was just a boy, 12 years old. Freckles, messy brown hair, and a look in his eyes that said he understood everything and didn't care to explain. His name was Eli Mercer. No criminal record, no history of violence, no military ties. The Empire accused him of high treason, terrorism, and digital subversion of the Fourth Fleet's recreational systems. In truth, he'd hacked into a long-range communications grid and forced every warship within 3 sectors to play Never Gonna Give You Up on loop for 12 straight hours. The ships crashed. Some soldiers wept. Others filed therapy claims. It was funny, until it wasn't. He stood alone on the Imperial dais, ringed by 12 judges, all from different planets, none from Earth. They loomed like statues in robes stitched with circuitry and power signature glyphs. Behind them floated a pulsing green banner of the Empire, its serpent insignia slowly coiling and uncoiling in rhythm to the courtroom's life support hum. The announcer, a gelatinous blue creature with several mouths and far too many consonants in its name, introduced the charges with flair and flourish. Viewers across the galaxy, especially on the outer rim, tuned in with popcorn, hoping for fireworks. The Empire knew the spectacle was about keeping its grip on dissent. But somewhere along the way, they forgot to consider who they were executing. Eli said nothing. Not through the opening accusations, not when the judges mocked Earth's barbaric customs, not even when they sneered at his silence. He just looked up toward the camera, toward the billions watching, and smiled, calm, unblinking, like he'd read the final page of a book everyone else had just started. One judge leaned forward, an insectoid with razor mandibles and breath that visibly hissed. "Child, you accessed military data systems without authorization. You rerouted command chains. You installed, what is this, disco loops into orbital defense platforms." "They had no rhythm," Eli replied. "I was trying to help." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Somewhere, someone on a distant moon laughed, then immediately shut it off. "You mock us," the judge thundered. "No, you're doing that to yourselves." He smiled again, faint but razor-sharp. "And you shouldn't have killed my dog." There had been a dog. A rescue mutt named Trouble. When the Empire's enforcers stormed the Mercer home in New Iowa Colony, they vaporized it without notice, said it barked too loud. That was when the hacking began. The trial was brief. Deliberation lasted less than 10 seconds. A synthetic AI behind the dais confirmed the verdict: guilty. The sentence: public execution. Method: atomic dissolution. In the control room, producers cut the dramatic music. Cameras zoomed in. Imperial technicians adjusted the lighting. Eli was asked to kneel. He didn't. A soldier pushed him. He stood back up. The announcer cleared its throats. "You have final words, Earthling?" Eli looked straight into the camera lens. "I was just trying to make you dance." And then, softly, like a whisper only a few would catch, "You shouldn't have done that." The light struck. A blinding white arc vaporized his body in under a second. The crowd gasped. The judges nodded in satisfaction. The Empire's citizens, taught to respect efficiency, clapped politely. Some changed channels. Others recorded reaction videos. A few whispered that the boy's smile at the end looked wrong. Not fearful, not pained, almost triumphant. 5 minutes later, Earth went dark, not in the way of power loss or communication silence. Dark, as in the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. The kind that settles over a battlefield a moment before a cannon fires. A silence older than reason. Across colonies, human outposts, orbital farms, and underground bunkers, screens froze. Broadcasts halted. Conversations ceased. In a kitchen lit by flickering LED strips, an old woman dropped her spoon into a bowl of tomato soup. She blinked at the screen. That boy was Margaret's kid. No one answered. She reached beneath the floorboards, pulled up a case marked Uncle Sam's Mistake Kit. and began assembling an object made entirely out of copper coils and saltpeter. In a dive bar orbiting Jupiter's third moon, a grizzled mechanic shut off the transmission and muttered, "Well, guess she's coming back." On a deserted asteroid once used as a special ops base, a security vault clicked open for the first time in 14 years. Inside it, a red jumpsuit hung neatly next to a name tag, M. Mercer. A locker slid aside. It revealed a duffel bag, a helmet, and a weapon that looked suspiciously like a leaf blower, but hummed with quantum disruption energy. A retinal scanner powered up. A quiet voice said, "Welcome back, Mama Bear." And on Earth, in a peaceful suburb rebuilt after the last Empire incursion, lawn sprinklers hissed rhythmically over manicured grass. Inside one particular house, there was no sign of activity until a garage door lifted, revealing an interior that should not have belonged to a civilian. No oil cans, no gardening tools, just racks of steel-plated gear. Monitors stacked 10 high, flickering with alien fleet data. VHS tapes labeled Redemption Protocols. Posters from 1980s action movies. A worn photo of a boy with a toothy grin, holding a homemade birthday cake shaped like a UFO. Beside it, a post-it note that read, "Not ready yet, Mom, but I'm getting there." The lawnmower stopped. The birds ceased chirping. Somewhere in the house, a button was pressed. Engines ignited. The Empire didn't notice. They were too busy congratulating themselves. They published articles praising their swift justice. They broadcast parades on the core worlds, complete with holograms mocking Earth's primitive tech and their obsession with organic emotionalism. Memes flooded their networks. Cartoons of humans crying. AI-generated mockeries of Eli. Then, reports came in. A surveillance station near the Delphan Rift went silent. No explosion. Just vanished. A shipyard orbiting Luraxis. For it was hit by what appeared to be a meteor made entirely of sharpened scrap metal and duct tape. 3 dreadnoughts melted into puddles of slag. On the core world of Aurelian, an entire Senate building was found emptied. No bodies. Just a cassette tape, still playing. The song? Never Gonna Give You Up. Within 90 seconds of execution, 23 locations critical to Empire logistics had gone offline. In 90 more, 57. By the time 5 full minutes passed since the broadcast, nearly every major command hub the Empire owned had suffered catastrophic failure. Plasma reactors ignited. Gravity wells reversed. AI systems turned on their masters, quoting Breakfast Club and Die Hard. Panic took root. But it wasn't war. Not yet. It was promise. A whisper passed from admiral to technician, from janitor to diplomat. One name, Mama Bear, Margaret Mercer, former Earth Special Forces. Code name, Ghost Mother. Retired after leading a one-woman infiltration of the Venler Citadel and causing a black hole using only a gas station microwave, a rubber duck, and a 6-pack of Jolt Cola. Thought to be dead. Left service to raise her only child. Vanished from records. Off the grid. A threat no longer considered relevant. Until today. The boy wasn't the warning. He was the reason. Now she was the warning. One final signal. Intercepted near the Empire's central AI command node. Confirmed the worst. A short message. Audio only, scratchy and distorted. Female voice. Calm. Cold. Familiar. Broadcast received. Commencing response. 5 minutes late, but fashionably so. The Empire had won the trial, but the sentence hadn't been delivered yet. And this time, they wouldn't be able to change the channel. The morning after the broadcast, a fog settled over New Iowa Colony. Not literal fog. Those had been banned after the 2093 Mist Creature incident, but the kind that seeped into everything. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Kids didn't go to school. Grown men turned off football replays and stared blankly at old photographs. Something unspoken passed from person to person. A tension that wasn't quite fear, wasn't quite grief. It was anticipation. Everyone knew what had happened. And more importantly, who it had happened to. Eli Mercer hadn't just been a boy. He'd been her boy. Most didn't speak her name. Not out of reverence, but because words failed. Rumors filled the silence instead. Some said she once brought down a planetary governor's palace using a hairpin and half a can of shaving cream. Others whispered she had a neural implant that could hijack alien thought. One bartender claimed he'd seen her drink a cocktail of liquid hydrogen and smile through it. But the only truth that mattered now was simple. She had disappeared from war for a reason. That reason was gone. Margaret Mercer had built a quiet life. A single-story house with weather-beaten siding. A backyard full of rusting toys and half-dug craters from Eli's adventures. She baked cookies for neighbors, waved at mail drones, wore sweatpants with outdated slogans. But underneath the polite smiles and PDA fundraisers, she was a weapon sealed in flesh. The trigger had been pulled. She stood now in the middle of her garage, barefoot, staring at the blinking green light that hadn't activated in over a decade. It sat beside a console labeled for absolute emergencies. Her fingers hovered above the keypad. Each digit she entered erased another year of peace. The screen glowed. Authorization accepted. Behind her, walls shifted. Panels slid back. The garage transformed. In less than a minute, it became a war room wrapped in nostalgia. Maps of star systems littered the walls, annotated with symbols no AI could decipher. Lockers opened, revealing weapons designed to mimic common household items. A baseball bat fused with sonic resonance tech. A toaster modified into a short-range EMP device. A kitchen knife with molecular disassembly capability. The humor wasn't accidental. She had always preferred irony to brutality, though she could wield both. She pulled her old suit from the rack. It was worn but functional. Earth colors, green and brown, laced with patches of duct tape and old campaign buttons. The name tag read M. Mercer, faded but legible. The smell of carbon, sweat, and blood clung to the fabric like memory. She slid into it slowly, methodically, each movement tightening her posture. The housewife vanished. Mama Bear returned. She stepped outside as the wind kicked up. A delivery drone paused mid-flight, scanned her face, and rerouted without comment. She walked down the empty street. People peeked through curtains, eyes wide, breath caught in throats. A man in a lawn chair holding a half-eaten sandwich saluted her silently. She nodded once. Her first stop was a scrapyard that technically hadn't existed since the Empire taxed private vehicle modifications out of legality. Buried beneath piles of satellite debris and ancient vending machines was a ship cobbled together from parts no sane engineer would ever combine. Its body was the frame of a 1987 Ford Mustang. Its wings were former solar sails reinforced with depleted uranium. The engines were alien in design, but ran on ethanol and spite. Painted across its nose in spray paint. "Mom's taxi, you missed curfew." She opened the cockpit. Dust hissed out. The seat still held a candy wrapper Eli had stuffed there during his last joyride. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just powered the engine and listened as it roared back to life like an old god waking up. Next came the call. She accessed an encrypted line so old it had moss growing on its digital keys. The signal bounced through forgotten relay points, reactivated 2 long-dead satellites, and pinged a trailer park floating in a Lagrange belt. Glitch answered shirtless, eating cereal with a screwdriver. He squinted at the screen, then dropped the bowl. "Holy hell, it's been 10 years? 14. You look the same. You look like someone vacuumed up a raccoon and taught it to use words." Glitch grinned. "You need me?" They killed Eli. The smile died instantly. His posture straightened. He turned toward a closet, opened it, revealing a wall of monitors, cables, and one ancient Game Boy running a virus simulator. "When do we start?" "I'm en route. Find the others." "Already done. Ronnie's in. Nora's, well, she never really left." She cut the feed. One by one, the rest joined. Ronnie Wrench, mechanic, demolitions expert, conspiracy theorist, and certified lunatic. He lived inside a decommissioned mining drill and brewed moonshine that doubled as rocket fuel. Nora, the sniper, silent, clinical, and deadly accurate. She spoke exclusively in quotes from 80s action movies and wore sunglasses indoors, in space, and at night. By the time they rendezvoused at an unregistered moon base orbiting the Gasso system, they had plans. Each member operated like a cog in a murder machine powered by grief and caffeine. Glitch had already hacked into 6 different Empire data lines, spreading false reports of a phantom rebellion. Ronnie built new weapons from salvage, including a microwave cannon that cooked enemy armor from the inside out. Nora calibrated orbital strikes by eye, her only question being, yippee-ki-yay? They weren't an army. They were worse. They were human problems. Incorrigible, unpredictable, fueled by trauma and pop culture references, and unburdened by the rules of engagement. The Empire, meanwhile, remained unaware. Their analysts dismissed Earth's silence as submission. They misread human unpredictability as chaos instead of strategy. And above all, they forgot who Margaret Mercer was. Their mistake wasn't killing a child. It was broadcasting it. The Empire relied on patterns, statistical likelihoods, and cultural modeling. But there were no models for vengeance this precise. No simulations accounted for grief forged in war. Every contingency plan the Empire had assumed humans would respond with diplomacy, protest, maybe even sanctions. They weren't ready for a mother with a vendetta and access to orbital artillery. The plan unfolded fast. Glitch rewired a defunct entertainment satellite to loop a very specific broadcast across all Empire-held sectors. It played the original execution, but reversed, Glitch scrambled, then overlaid it with static and a cryptic message. Do you hear the silence coming? The message spread faster than fire. Empire troops grew anxious. Rumors infected the ranks. Some claimed the boy's soul had uploaded into the mainframe. Others believed Earth had created a weapon so powerful it erased memories. One general ordered mandatory positivity seminars. Another shot his own communications officer for humming the Rick Astley song. Meanwhile, Mercer moved without pause. She didn't need an army. She had precision. Strike, vanish, repeat. A garrison vanished near the Black Ring Nebula. A weapons depot exploded without warning. Its security systems rerouted to play Elvis impersonations. An admiral's personal cruiser was discovered floating in space with a post-it stuck to the helm. You're grounded. As chaos spread, the central leadership of the Empire met in secret. They argued. They blamed. They denied. But the message was clear. She was back. Every military file had once flagged Margaret Mercer as a Class 1 existential threat. Code Black. Unstoppable. Unpredictable. Lethal. They had dismissed those warnings, relegated her to history, filed her under retired assets. Now they couldn't locate her, couldn't track her, couldn't stop her, and they had no idea where the next strike would come from. In her private ship, she sat in the pilot's seat. Her fingers brushed the toy robot Eli had left behind. It was scratched, one eye missing, still standing. She activated the comm system. Static hissed. To the Empire's Central Command, her message was brief. I'm not here to start a war. Pause. I'm here to end yours. The signal cut. And somewhere, far away, a child's laughter echoed inside an empty transmission tower. The Empire's strength lay in predictability. They controlled through protocol, enforced through intimidation, and sustained through bureaucracy. Their systems were flawless by design. Automated command relays, centralized AI decision-making, and a strictly monitored network of psychological compliance loops. But their downfall wasn't in their machines or methods. It was in their assumption that the universe operated according to logic, that humans, under pressure, would bend like all others had. They had never faced retaliation rooted in grief, humor, and a complete disregard for consequence. Margaret Mercer didn't announce her war. It began in quiet detonations and inexplicable outages. Her strikes were surgical but confusing, designed not just to destroy but to humiliate. An entire cruiser vanished into a mining shaft that had been disguised with reflective holograms shaped like pie charts. An orbital platform collapsed under the weight of its own gravity shield, reprogrammed to mimic the effects of a black hole after receiving a data packet labeled "Cool Science Trick." An elite unit sent to suppress a rogue colony opened their supply crates only to find cassette tapes, chewing gum, and a message that read, "Come find me." The Empire's first response was to double down. Armored divisions deployed to strategic planets. Curfews imposed. Surveillance expanded. But the more they cracked down, the worse it became. Their systems began to implode under the strain of chasing shadows. On every front, Margaret's team struck with tools that defied expectation. Nothing they used was state-of-the-art. Glitch operated most of their hacking tools through an interface connected to a handheld Tamagotchi. Ronnie Wrench rigged drones with firecrackers and bug zappers. Nora used an antique rifle outfitted with analog optics because laser scopes, in her words, got no soul. Empire commanders couldn't understand what they were fighting. Their analysts issued reports full of redacted nonsense. One admiral was removed after declaring that Earth had weaponized irony. Their AI counselors suggested the attackers were emotionally unstable and therefore illogical. They were right, but logic wasn't a shield. It was a leash. In the outer systems, colonies began to rise, not out of allegiance to Earth, but because fear of the Empire had given way to admiration for those unafraid to poke in the eye. On Juvrex 9, a human engineer used a pressure cooker and liquid nitrogen to disable a garrison's tank. On Taraxis, 3 teenagers hacked a communications array and forced every loudspeaker to play audio clips of Margaret quoting famous Earth moms. Lines like, "Because I said so," and "Clean your room or I'll clean the floor with you." The Empire soldiers, bred on obedience and efficiency, had no response to the chaos. Their simulations never included mobs laughing in their face. Each strike unraveled a piece of the Empire's illusion. They had built their reign on the premise that humans were the weakest of the sapient races. Unrefined, disorganized, lacking telepathy, plasma manipulation, or mind-linking abilities. But humans had memory, and spite, and cultural baggage sharp enough to cut through a fleet. They made war personal, and Margaret made it surgical. She didn't go for targets. She went for hearts. One by one, the Empire's planets fell, not to invasion, but to defection. Station governors surrendered without a fight after receiving packages containing old Earth movies and burnt copies of chocolate chip cookies. Entire security networks shut down after Glitch introduced a virus disguised as a motivational screensaver that asked, "What would Mama do?" every 12 seconds. Even loyalists began to question the cause when their high priest temples were rearranged overnight into replicas of 1980s arcades. In the imperial capital of Aurelian, fear began to take root. The Chancellor, a bipedal amphibian with luminous gills and an obsession with ceremonial process, called an emergency summit. 12 sector generals gathered in a tower made of translucent steel, arguing beneath banners of conquest. They debated the scale of the attacks, the psychology behind them, the probability that Margaret Mercer even existed. Some claimed it was an Earth disinformation campaign. Others believed she was a myth. Only one general, a veteran of the First Terran Suppression, remained silent. When finally called upon, he leaned forward and set a photo on the table. It was grainy but unmistakable. Margaret, younger, holding a plasma rifle with one arm, while cradling a baby in the other. "She doesn't bluff," he said. "She waits." Margaret didn't wait long. Her next message came not through hacking, but through an ancient diplomatic channel no longer monitored. It was a video, unpolished, recorded in the cockpit of her ship. She wore no armor, no insignia, just an old Earth jacket, and her son's dog tags around her neck. Her voice was even, calm. "You killed my son," she said. "You thought it would make a point. You were right. It did." She paused. "And now I'll make mine." The video cut. Immediately afterward, over 100 Empire satellites began broadcasting Earth television reruns interlaced with static symbols that triggered mass system failures. Their command AIs interpreted the intrusion as a command to self-reboot. Several self-destructed out of sheer confusion. In retaliation, the Empire issued a bounty, Margaret's face plastered across galaxies with the highest reward ever offered. They labeled her a terrorist, a destabilizer, a myth-turned threat. But the more they shouted, the more she became a symbol. Rebel groups adopted her tactics. Civilians scrawled her name on walls. Artists remixed her messages into music. A black market grew overnight, trading in Earth memorabilia, quotes, and even forged Mama Bear survival guides. Amid all this, Margaret never stopped moving. Each mission precise, each target chosen not just for strategic value, but for the message it sent. She never struck civilians. She never touched the innocent. But she made sure those complicit in Eli's death, judges, enforcers, commanders, were not only eliminated but remembered. Their last moments were recorded, broadcast, and captioned with lines from Earth sitcoms. Her actions forced the Empire to adapt. They restructured security, added redundancy, rotated personnel. But it was too late. Margaret didn't just destroy infrastructure. She destroyed certainty. Soldiers began checking under their beds for booby-trapped teddy bears. Officials requested psychological leave after waking to find toy spaceships jammed in their air filters. Even seasoned assassins grew paranoid, unsure if their next target was an ambush wrapped in sarcasm. In one instance, a planet-wide evacuation was triggered because an unauthorized transmission claimed Margaret had sent cookies. No one opened the package. The Capital Center defense grid, the core of Empire security, was finally upgraded to prevent her entry. It was reinforced with triple encryption, guarded by fleets and tethered to neural verification protocols. It took Margaret 4 hours to breach it, not through force, but a Trojan file embedded in an Empire tax code update. Once inside, she didn't disable the system. She didn't destroy it. She reprogrammed it to play Eli's laugh every time it armed. The Chancellor himself was present when it triggered. The sound echoed to the war room, light, pure, unburdened. It broke something in them. From that point forward, every official communication was infused with hesitation. Orders took longer. Confusion grew. Margaret had become more than human. She was a symbol of everything the Empire had tried to bury under structure and steel. She was love, grief, and rage refined into an instrument of rebellion. But she wasn't finished. Each strike brought her closer to the heart. The central conflict no longer sat on distant battlefields or in outer systems. It lived now in the minds of those who had watched Eli die and laughed. She wasn't just dismantling an empire. She was closing in on the ones who lit the match. Her team knew what was coming. Ronnie stopped joking. Glitch worked in silence. Even Nora, who had once quoted Predator during a firefight, simply nodded when Margaret handed her the final mission plan. There was no celebration, no rallying cry, just a shared understanding that something irreversible had begun, that the final blow wouldn't be another explosion or broadcast or glitch in the system. It would be personal. Margaret stared at the screen. The map before her pulsed softly, red markers vanishing one by one. Only one remained, blinking steadily at the core of the Empire's final stronghold. She reached out, touched the screen. For Eli, the Empire's heart was a city of mirrors and pride, a floating colossus orbiting the burned remains of a world they'd once erased from history. Verelion Prime had never been touched by war. Its towers reached beyond the atmosphere, wrapped in force fields and ceremony. Every inch had been architected to reflect dominance. Every breath taken within it measured, documented, controlled. For centuries, it had stood untouched, not by fortune, but by belief. The belief that it could not fall. Now that belief was cracked. Internal memos flagged morale as critically low. Generals muttered contradictory commands. The Chancellor hadn't left his subterranean quarters in 9 days. Entire fleets hung idle above core worlds, waiting for orders that never came. Bounty from Margaret Mercer flooded every back channel and black site. None were claimed, not for lack of ambition, but because those foolish enough to try were never seen again. She had not laid siege to the capital. She had not fired a single weapon at its walls. She had simply kept coming. And in that slow, deliberate approach, she stripped away every layer of their confidence. What had begun as a mother's grief was now a dismantling of an ideology. She didn't move like a soldier. She moved like inevitability. They expected her ship to be a relic, patched together from nostalgia and dirt. Instead, it cut through their final blockade like a phantom, bypassing defenses, nullifying scanners, rerouting their own drones to chase shadows across the far moons. By the time they realized she had arrived, she was already inside the city. Her boots touched the polished floor of the Imperial Court 5 minutes before the alarm sounded. The guards recognized her too late. They raised their weapons out of reflex. She didn't raise hers. She didn't need to. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then turned blood red. Every screen on the wall blinked to life and displayed Eli's face, mid-smile, looped in a perfect stutter of happiness. The guards froze, stunned not by fear, but by the sudden ache in their chest. They let her pass. At the end of the hall, beneath the 1,000-year-old sigil of imperial dominion, the chancellor stood with his ceremonial staff and eyes that refused to meet hers. His robes were flawless, but his hands trembled. The chamber, designed to echo every command with gravitas, only amplified the stillness. He tried to speak first. His voice cracked. "You could have brought your war here directly. Why didn't you?" She looked past him, through the skylight, where the Empire's flag still rippled in artificial wind. "I wasn't here to conquer." He didn't understand. He couldn't. His entire life had been shaped by hierarchy, by control and cause and consequence. He had seen rebellion. He had crushed planets. But nothing in his experience prepared him for vengeance that refused to follow protocol. "You've broken our communications, our trade, our food lines. I've made you feel it," she interrupted. Her voice wasn't angry. It was cold in the way still water is cold, hiding depth beneath its surface. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, dented object, a toy. Eli's robot, patched with tape, its limbs singed. She set it on the floor. "He used to dream of this place," she said. "Not to destroy it, to change it. He thought the galaxy could be better. He believed people could be better. You killed him to make a point. I've spent every moment since proving it was the wrong one." The Chancellor backed away. "You don't understand. He was destabilizing, dangerous. The order we've built." "You built convenience," she said, "not peace." He stepped behind a console. His hand hovered over a hidden panel. "You can't end us," he said, half to her, half to himself. "We are too big to die." "Not big," she corrected, "just bloated." Her team was everywhere. Glitch had flooded the Capitol's data core with millions of files disguised as children's songs, each carrying subtle corruptions that unraveled decades of encryption. Ronnie had replaced the entire ventilation system in the upper towers with aerosolized sodium compounds designed to erode synthetic armor and, incidentally, make the entire Senate smell faintly like burnt cheese. Nora, perched in a tower 1 mile away, had eyes on every possible exit, her scope dancing from visor to visor, waiting for a signal she knew might never come. Each one of them had volunteered, knowing the outcome might not be survival. This was not a battle for victory. It was a reckoning. The Chancellor reached for the panel. Margaret didn't move. "Do it," she said. "Release the failsafe. Detonate your throne room. Clean it all up like you always do. Tell the galaxy I was a threat, a terrorist, a ghost from a backward world. But understand something. No matter how much of me you vaporize, you already lost. The moment you looked at a child and saw a symbol instead of soul, you signed your own ending." His hand hovered. "His name was Eli," she said. He pressed the panel. Nothing happened. He looked down, confused. The panel sparked once, then whined, then displayed a simple error message in Earth English. "This button has been grounded." Ronnie's signature. Margaret stepped forward. Her shadow fell over the Chancellor. He shrank back. "You wanted obedience," she said. "You got it for 1,000 years. But now the galaxy sees you for what you are. Not gods, not saviors. Just cowards wrapped in bureaucracy." "I was protecting order," he whispered. "No, you were protecting comfort." She turned her back on him. He screamed something, words of defiance, desperation. But they dissolved before they reached her ears. She walked out into the courtyard, where the artificial sun began to flicker. Screens blinked to life as the people of the Empire watched her stand where none had ever dared to. Behind her, the great flag of the Empire caught fire. Every station, every world, every district that had once been taught to fear the serpent now witnessed its death without a single bullet fired. No invasion, no siege, just a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to remind them. Across the systems, silence reigned. Not the oppressive kind the Empire used to maintain order, but the kind that followed revelation. In orbit, Earth's signal finally returned. A single broadcast. Eli's voice, preserved in a recording he had made weeks before his arrest. It played unfiltered, raw. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. That's okay. Mistakes happen. Just don't let them stop you from making things better. I believed in people, even the ones who didn't deserve it, especially them. It ended without flair. No anthem. No montage. Just his voice soft and steady. The empire didn't burn because of violence. It burned because it had no foundation left. Truth had cracked its walls. Memory had hollowed its pillars. Margaret never needed to raise an army. She only needed them to look inward and find rot. When she returned to her ship, she didn't celebrate. Her crew was waiting. Glitch gave her a weak smile, cheeks smudged with ash. Ronnie held a cup of something that steamed and fizzed at the same time. Nora gave a small nod, her eyes red but dry. They asked her what came next. She looked out the viewport at the galaxies stretched before them. War-torn, fractured, but open. We fix what they broke, she said, and we do it our way. No one argued. No one cheered. They just prepared to move forward. And somewhere in the heart of a galaxy once ruled by cruelty, hope began to feel dangerous again.